Thrift Store Workers of Reddit. What's the craziest thing you've ever found in donations? I haven't worked at a thrift store. My aunt did manage one. They had somebody donate a small chest that was locked. My aunt hired somebody to open it. Inside was $9,000, a gun, a stamp collection, and a glass sex toy. Yes, this is a 100% true story. Sex toy was discarded. Gun was turned into the local police. The money they tried to contact and trace who donated the chest with no luck. Half the money they kept for the thrift store, and the other half they donated to charity. I don't know what happened to the stamp collection. Story 2. We find sex toy usually once a year or so. Found a stuffed rabbit with a huge junk. We found $3,000 in a purse. Someone donated 3,100 pounds of stuffed monkeys once. Also, when we find weird and odd clothing, we usually wear it for fun. As a dude, I've worn a lot of dresses working there in the last 4 years. Story 3. I worked at one in college. It was mom and pop, and we were allowed first pick since we were sorting through everything, which was about the only good thing about that job. Some guy's father died and he donated all of his clothes. It was some really nice stuff, all designer. He was about the same size as me, but taller, so I got some good stuff. I ended up snagging a quality wool suit that was bespoke from some DC tailor. Fit me perfect after I took it in to get it fixed, and I still have it. And a Burberry trench coat. Normally we just get junk and the occasional good vintage t-shirt, so it was pretty crazy. You could have sold this stuff online for a lot, but he just wanted to get rid of it, I think. We had someone donate the biggest collection of old biddy clothes, only to find crumpled money in all the pockets. It was close to $4K. We had no idea who had donated it, so me and my coworker just kept the money. Story 4. Not so much crazy, but a happy coincidence. This is like 30 years ago. My husband bought a game called Ubi for his brother-in-law. He played it once over Christmas and just raved and said it was super fun. I went back to the tiny hole-in-the-wall toy store after Christmas to get a game for him. They said sorry, they only got and sold a couple of games and couldn't get more. It was just a demo and limited run. They had only printed like 100 of them. Darn. It sounded really fun, but what are you gonna do? About 5 years later, I'm pricing wares at Goodwill and pull the game out of a box. I priced it at $15, which was crazy expensive for a used game, and bought it on my lunch break. It was on my husband's birthday. Boy, was he surprised. Story 5. A diaper genie, complete with dirty diapers. Following a horrific tornado in late April, spring here in the US, loads of winter coats, and a handful of string bikinis from a teen girl who was adamant they go to a victim. No one wanted the coats or this girl's used bikinis. Appliances of all types that didn't work. One woman said so as she was dropping it off. It's broken, but you can fix it. We didn't repair stuff. We had a pretty generous policy of taking just about anything from just about anyone, figuring that this load might all go to the dump, but the next one might have something great for us to sell. We did finally ban one particular couple whose donations always went straight to the dumpster. Bedbugs, roaches, brown recluse spiders, rat pills, not mouse, rat, and just plain nasty, dirty clothes that stank to the highest heaven of who knows or cares what. Just give me a gas mask already. They knew their time was up, but would sneak in while we were on lunch or pile it by the gate after hours until one day I caught them as they pulled in and politely told them we were quite full, thanks, and that we couldn't use their donations anymore. The woman didn't seem upset or surprised, but it was obvious the man was annoyed. One of my coworkers said he knew of the guy and thought he was just too cheap to take stuff to the dump for $5. We got some gems too. I got an amazing leather laptop bag that I adore and used 7 years later for $10. Story 6. I used to volunteer at a Salvation Army to get a scholarship. It was, on the whole, a pretty enjoyable time because some really nice people worked there. So what I did a lot was rearrange the VH tapes in the back because they were always getting looked through and people don't put them back. I notice a VH's, oh look, it's Akira, that's a cool movie. And oh look, a Street Fighter movie. So I look through this anime that I guess some dude donated, and then I see an odd one. Now, I know that a lot of anime often has suggestive covers, but this one went kind of far. Some dude, or maybe someone who didn't know better, donated a crapload of adult tapes to a Christian charity. And the nice Cuban lady who ran the place stocked it all without knowing any better. I bought all of it. Story 7. The sheer volume of junk. Nobody wants your mismatched plates and flatware. Why would they when other people donate matching pieces? Old CRT TVs and monitors? No one's going to take them because no one wants them, and they cost money to dispose of properly. If you're going to donate clothes, ask yourself if they're in a condition you would still wear them. And this should go without saying, wash them. The absolute worst was after yard sales. Once there was an old wallet containing a decent amount of old money. That cash was definitely worth more in the 70s when someone put it there. There was a surprising amount of silver I guess people assumed was plated. The thrift store wasn't the primary mission of the organization, so most of the valuable stuff went in a separate section and eventually ended up in an online auction. Story 8. Was trying to service my community by working on the front receiving lines, emptying out large donation dumpsters. Someone deposited a dog rolled up in some old shag carpet. Story 9. Don't work at a thrift store. But my mom and aunt always said most PPL rummage through and hope to find antiques, hidden money in luggages because they aren't always checked. Told my friend this once when we went to look for a blazer for him. When he went to check out, he was looking through the pockets and found red pockets, Chinese red envelopes, full of money, and thought I had planted them. I didn't. Then we realized someone may have wanted to bury a loved one in that blazer. Story 10. Blue lace knickers with a huge skid mark, a beautiful tweed skirt suit, crap covered from the waistband to the hem, a toad skin purse, a fox, opened a DVD case to make sure the disc was in it, face with a condom stuck to the disc, a lovely leather purse with a few coins in the condom, alongside its wrapper. We get what I call drawer swipes. People just empty drawers, bags, and boxes straight into black bags. Why the duck someone would think we'd be able to sell an odd dusty button, an open packet of hankies, a broken corporate gifted calculator, tannin stand mugs, is beyond me. I could go on for hours. People living on the poverty line should not have to accept other people's crap. Story 11. My buddy worked at the local Goodwill and sent me a text one day saying I needed to check out what some lady had dropped off. It was an original Nintendo Virtual Boy still in the box, with all the games ever released for it in America. Now, they weren't exactly collectible, but they are rare and can fetch some coin online or in some used gaming stores like the one I used to work at. I bought it outright for only $20. Story 12. I worked at a Goodwill for 6 years. I think the weirdest was the time when this truck driver gave us some boxes of bootleg DVDs, the kind that come with the poorly printed out covers, on the burned DVDs that have the movie name written on them, typically in those slim jewel cases. Among them was what I could only describe as bootleg adult film. So you'd get some crafty bootleg copy of Big Mama's House, and then some bootleg copy of Big Mama's Blouse. Okay, that was a crafty joke. But seriously, he had some adult film that looked like someone just recorded some escort and crap out some cover art and mispaint. It was pretty wild. Most of the time, though, we just got junk that people didn't want, and in all honesty, probably should have just been thrown away. But when you tell people they can write off their donation for their taxes, I believe it brings out the worst in people. Story 13. I volunteered at one. A guy came in and donated a ton of his daughter's old Pokemon cards. I took them thinking I could make serious dough. There were a bunch of mint foils and hard cases and stuff. Turns out none were first edition. Whole lot was worth maybe 30. Story 14. A box, like a big one, full of old gas masks. Most weird stuff we receive is somewhat understandable, accidentally brought to us, or people just want to get rid of it. But this one will puzzle me forever. Story 15. I managed a thrift store, and someone had donated about 6 or 7 original Redline Hot Wheels, most of them with the buttons. I bought them for 25 cents a piece. The price was set by my boss that didn't know what they were or their worth. Sold everything for $250 on eBay within 2 days. Story 16. Live hand grenades. One was from World War II, a 40mm grenade launcher round, and large caliber bullets. Someone donated their grandpa's old military stuff. That was a fun day. Story 17. An older lady nonchalantly set a cardboard box of donations on our donation table. I can't tell you what was in the first few layers, but at the bottom was a photo album and a printed book. In the photo album were all original photos from Japan. The printed book was from Japan during World War II and was full of photos of Japanese in military regalia. On both the inside covers were a stamped message from the US government. Upon research, the stamped US message basically labeled the books spoils of war. We have yet to get the book writings translated. Our town also had a Japanese internment camp during World War II. Crazy cool, crazy sad, crazy history. Destined for the museum once we satisfy curiosity. Story 18. Not a thrift store worker, but I work at a public library that accepts book donation. Some things I've gotten. Books about bomb making, a set of photos of buffalo and deer, because maybe these can be used in a geography class. A complete set of every issue of National Geographic from the 1970s. A couple of respiratory illnesses from all of the moldy books. Pro tip. It's nice that you value your books enough to not throw them away, but please, if it's old, outdated, or gross, throw it the duck away. We are no longer in an age where we might lose valuable information if you throw crap away, so please stop making me sick. Story 19. I worked at Goodwill for 4 years. People have donated a box of crickets, a snake, a bag of dog poop, and the compactor trash didn't get picked up for a week after that. It smelled awful. Horribly stained in clothes, used socks and underwear, sex toys, lots of Christian books about how women can be good, obedient wives, always recycled those if I found them first. Knives mixed in with bags of clothes so that someone accidentally hit themselves. Story 20. Volunteered for a rehab/ministry that has donations brought in all the time. Some independent donor brought in a fully functional, excellent condition grand piano that ended up being worth $20K. Story 21. I worked at the donation sorting warehouse for a local thrift store chain when I was in college. I opened up a box of toys and found a sandwich Ziploc bag of whitish brown powder. It was about half full. I showed it to my manager. He was pretty sure it was substances, but instead of calling the cops and making a big deal, we just tossed it in the giant trash compactor. So yeah, substances. That time, there was a pallet of porcelain dolls. Story 22. What do define as crazy? A coworker once found $800 in a purse. Any money we find is considered a donation, and I don't think my corporate office really cares to look to see if things were donated accidentally. We routinely get sex toys, nasty underwear, sex swings, and poles. My coworkers or I have found microwaves with food still in them, pans with half-cooked ground meat, cat poop, clothes with maggots in them. It's sometimes a really disgusting job. Story 23. One time we found a bunch of teenage love letters from around 1970. This was not long before Valentine's Day, so the letters became part of our seasonal display. A local TV station here did a story on the letters and helped us to find the people who wrote them. Story 24. A large bag of beautiful baby clothes, carefully washed and folded, with shards of glass folded up inside each item. Not sure what was the reasoning behind that, besides trying to hurt the workers. Story 25. My husband has worked for Goodwill for years, so the weirdest thing was a taxidermized bald eagle, which is illegal to be in possession of. They called the police and they came and took it. He also says people's ashes get donated all of the time. He just remembered that he told me someone donated thousands of dollars worth of fentanyl patches. Story 26. Goodwill was my first job. We found a refrigerator box filled with booze bottles. The manager made us break it all in the dumpster. Someone donated a couple dozen cartons of cigarettes since they were quitting. My favorite what the heck moment was the Christmas package wrapped box filled with gear. That was hilarious. I bought one of the bracelets as a souvenir. Story 27. I don't work there, but I was so excited to find 2 Rolex watches and thought I made a steal of a deal at $240. Both are fake. Can't sell them because my luck would be to get incarcerated for counterfeit Rolex sales. Can't return them because of the no return policy. Very sad day. Story 28. Nothing too interesting in my time there, but I saw a 70s Bang and Olufsen stereo system go into the dumpster because they didn't have time to sort it all. I was this close to going back for it, but they padlock their dumpsters and have a jillion cameras out back. Some people are awfully protective of their garbage. Story 29. I did community service at Goodwill, and we had to sort through huge boxes with paper-thin gloves on, and there were used needles and other crap that could stab you in there. Also, the managers would yell at the mentally impaired people who worked there and were really mean to them. Story 30. People out there finding vintage 1980s synths in perfect working order at thrift shops. All I ever see is granny mugs and vinyl copies of Supertramp's Breakfast in America. What's the craziest thing you found at a thrift store? Story 1. Whilst perusing the kids' books for my then toddler son, I spot a copy of this fabulously illustrated book of fairy tales I'd loved dearly as a child. Hey, I had this book, I say to my mother and then open the front cover. My name scrawled in pencil crayon. It was my copy. We deduced that my father must have donated it at some point and it had found its way back around, years later. I bought it back and still have it. Story 2. Opened up a case for Cabela's Dangerous Hunts for PS2 and saw 2 Girls Gone Wild DVDs as well as the game. Bought it, took it home, found another adult DVD behind the game, and another in the manual of the game. My friend and I always refer to it as Cabela's Dangerous Escort. Story 3. I used to volunteer at a charity shop in a little village in the Cotswolds, and a lot of wealthy elderly people lived around there. So we often got quite nice stuff. Once we had an Alexander McQueen dress and my manager priced it up at $100, which was the most expensive thing I'd ever seen in a charity shop. It's usually well under 10 talents for any item of clothing. On the flip side, I once saw this insane one-of-a-kind denim jacket in a second-hand vintage shop. It was baggy and crop-cut, embroidered in big rhinestones and beads, looked like something out of an old Janet Jackson music video. Anyone who knows me knows I have a penchant for 80s fashion and jackets. This thing was calling to me. Sadly, I didn't have the cash to buy it at the time. Months went by, the shop got rebranded. I moved on with my life. One day, I happened to go back into the shop with a friend, and the jacket was still there. I decided it was destiny, and took it home with me. It still lives in my wardrobe to this day, and every now and then I'll wear it to parties. Some of my friends think it's weird, but whatever, I love it. And I've had tons of people come up to me just to compliment me on it. Story 4. Nothing crazy, but I found a sapphire tennis bracelet for $200, thought it was nice and maybe a bit underpriced. Bought it, took it to a jeweler for a $75 appraisal. The shop valued it at $1,250. Said it was a yoga sapphire bracelet with 8 CT plus stone weight. Put it on consignment with them for $850. With the appraisal certificate, made a nice little profit. The pawn shop just didn't know what they had, and I was gambling. Story 5. Me and my brother were out thrift shopping, and he found a copy of the first episode of VeggieTales on VH. We grew up watching VeggieTales, and we decided to buy it. My brother likes to digitally archive old media. Once we got home, we pulled the tape out of the sleeve, and inside the sleeve was a piece of paper with the goals and values of the Big Idea crew. The first paragraph reads, "First of all, thanks for buying VeggieTales. It takes some courage to buy an unknown product from an unknown company, especially through the mail. We've been working hard around the clock to make sure you won't be disappointed." After reading this, it occurred to us that this wasn't any ordinary copy, but one of 500 from the very first production run, back when you had to mail order them. We still have it, and it's in great condition for something that was made in 1990, Story 6. A $500 cashmere sweater for $3.50, $1,600 pair of Louboutins for $6, and a $1,200 Versace purse for $40. Some people have too much ducking money, and Goodwill employees don't know the difference between cashmere and acyclic/polyester wool mixes, lamb's leather and cheap leather, 100% cotton and polyester or acrylic. They severely undermark quality clothing because they don't know the actual value, quality fibers that will last decades longer than their synthetic competitors. Story 7. A classy, mid-range, vintage, antique, not sure on age, gold engagement ring with a tiny diamond in the middle. Not worth a fortune, but more than the $2 I paid, and I used it as it was very us when my now husband proposed. Story 8. Work at a thrift store, had a few things get donated that caught my attention. A hospital bed, complete with leg supports for childbirth. A foam hat/headpiece thing, bright pink with lots of foam spirals attached, which I actually wore for a couple days until one of our managers told me to put it away. A glass model head for wigs or makeup or something, and a small pack of, I forget exactly what they're called, retro sodas, 2 strawberry flavored ones that taste like Jolly Ranchers, 2 cream soda, pretty dang good, 2 blueberry, didn't get to try, 2 root beer, Dad's root beer or something close, and this stuff called Cock and Bull that tasted foul and left an aftertaste similar to mouthwash. Story 9. Oh, I used to work at a thrift store, and these are some of the donation. Used syringes in the pockets of donated clothing, brand new DVD player that an elderly couple bought, couldn't figure out and for some reason didn't want to return. An entire box of Hulk Hogan's wrapping tape from the 90s, seriously worth checking out if you haven't yet. A suitcase full of pre-weighed baggies of weed. They never came back for it, sadly, since none of us really cared about the illegal aspect of it. Story 10. Cute girl browsing the same area as me. We end up talking and she lets her ride go home without her because she wants to hang out. Cool. Anyway, we shop around a bit and hit a few more stores nearby. Then I drive her home. She insists she leaves her backpack with me in my car because it's her ex-boyfriend's and he doesn't deserve it anyway. Little sketchy, but okay, I guess. I got her number and she goes in the house. I get back home and for craps giggles decide to investigate the backpack. Stuffed to the brim with individually wrapped dime bags of substances. Story 11. When I worked at a thrift shop sorting donations, I opened up a small book of stamps that contained around 200 postage stamps from the Third Reich. The stamps ended up being donated to a collection, and I got to hear some cool stories about WBU from the older volunteers. Story 12. I found a children's alphabet abacus, but for some reason, the only words you were able to make were wet and dirty. The 2 words were surrounded by little blocks with flowers and stars and stuff on them. I fiddled with it a bunch and couldn't take it apart, so I'm not sure why it exists. I, of course, bought it, and it now sits on my desk next to my 2 other prized thrift possessions. A sign that says, "So many men, so little time," and a framed and signed photo of Patrick Wilson riding a horse. Story 13. My mom had a thrift store and bought a whole bunch of old books at an estate sale to sell at the store. She priced them all at $1. First mistake. She didn't really peruse them to see what was there. Second mistake. Someone came back to the store to tell us that she paid $1 for an original printing of Ulysses S. Grant's autobiography, and it had his autograph too. My mom picked a whole bouquet of oopsie daisies. Story 14. A women's red wool Christmas-themed one-piece nightgown that was probably 30 years old and looked like it had poop stains on the back of it. My buddy bought it for $1 and wore it to work for an ugly sweater Christmas competition. He won, and the image got distributed to the entire company of 800 people. Story 15. I volunteer for a nonprofit agency, Animal Rescue. We have a thrift store. One time, someone dropped off a pole dancing kit, portable pole that you could set up. It sold rather quickly. We were also donated a dresser. It has a bunch of $100 bills in it. Story 16. I found a Chewbacca mug that was shaped like his head. Does that make sense? As in, it wasn't just a normal mug with a Chewbacca design for $1. The best part was the person who rang me up calling it a very scary bear, and on a separate occasion, a life-size cutout of Hillary Clinton. Story 17. Found a book with a pretty nice cover. I opened it and saw that there was a little note to the recipient from the giver of the copy. I thought it was cute, so I bought it. When I went home, however, I found out by reading the note again that the one who wrote the book was also the one who wrote the note inside herself. It got even cuter. Story 18. Not really crazy, but my sister and I went and found a cute black Navy sailor Halloween dress. I had a hat at home that would match. It looks so nice to be at a thrift store. Looks almost new. Paid $6 for it. I got curious and Googled the brand from the tag it had on the back. I found the same dress for $80 on the manufacturer website. Sweet deal. Story 19. Someone's handmade wedding quit. Seems it was used as a guest book of sorts, since there are handwritten notes and signatures all over it. My friend was with me, and she felt so sad about the idea of something so sentimental sitting in a thrift shop that she bought it. She now uses it as a throw in her house. Story 20. A $12 pair of purple velvet Converse shoes, custom made for Angus Young of AC/DC for a photo shoot. My partner wears them for his powerlifting tournaments. Yes, he wins in his age-weight group. A $7 Tiffany & Co. Italian ceramic bunny coin bank, worth about 200 CDN. A fossil purse. Red leather for $8, worth about 350. A vintage 80s Royal Doulton tea service, $12, worth about 500. Story 21. The only secondhand store in my area at the time was run by a church, and I managed to find a crafty game called Satanica. Had to buy it, just because of that. The sales lady was clutching at her pearls. It was delicious. Story 22. I collect old comic books. One of the dealers in my city went to a thrift store and found a copy of Fantastic Four #1. He had it restored and made a killing on it. He told me that his hands were shaking when he brought the pile of comics to the front of the store. He paid $25 for each of them. Story 23. Steve Madden boots for $7. They look like those yellow work boots that Timberlands are known for, but with a stiletto heel. Nothing really wrong with them. Managed to get out the minor stains that were on it. Was a great find, especially since my feet are huge, and it's hard to find shoes my size. Story 24. Found a few DVD that were in the wrong case. One was marked Star Wars. Opened the case, and it was titled Black Stretchers. At the same store, I found a sex toy in the toy section. I did go home with the video. It was actually pretty good. Story 25. A mink shrug in excellent condition for $14 in the Halloween section of Goodwill. Now I just need to find a good deal on some class, so I can wear it without feeling like an imposter. Story 26. There was a folded up flag in a frame in a Salvation Army store near me. You know, like the kind they give to a veteran's widow when he dies. It was in a case with a sign saying basically, if you know someone who is missing their flag, send them over. Kinda sad. What is your most embarrassing thrift store story? Story 1. I tried on a cute pair of boots, went up to the register to find out the price and found a person looking for their boots. They had taken them off to try on a pair of shoes. Story 2. When I was a teenager, I found this really cool baby doll dress. The dress was kinda tight. I didn't think it would fit, but my mother kept insisting I could get it on, so I kept trying, wriggling myself into it. I finally got the dress on even though it was very tight and came out of the dressing room. It was neat, but it was definitely way too tight, so I decided I didn't want it. As soon as I got back into the dressing room, I knew I was in trouble. There was no way this thing was coming off. I wiggled and jumped and shimmied, but nothing helped. I came back out of the dressing room and asked my mother to help me. I was only 15 at the time. I was mortified, as people were lining up outside the dressing room, waiting for their chance to use the room looking on. At this point, I had found myself an audience. I was often awkward as a teenager, being rather tall. 6 tall, in fact. It didn't take long before a dozen of more people were standing around and offering their opinions and suggestions. Finally, it came down to a clerk having to cut me out of the dress. I'm never going to forget that day. I was mortified. I think of that every time I try clothes on now. Story 3. I thrifted a pair of children's pants and found a $100 bill in the pocket as I prepared to wash them. I was thrilled and quickly went to the gas station to buy goodies for the kids and to fill our car up. It was counterfeit. Luckily, the gas station was my regular spot, and the workers knew me and didn't call police and let me pay for the gas on payday. But a random person in line was pissed and yelled at me the whole time while they tried to call police. I was mortified. It was my worst thrift experience. Story 4. I was doing a very large decluttering project. I like to collect dishes, and people would frequently give me things and I never turned them down. Anyway, I had a very nice collection of teacups with saucers and some other pretty vintage-looking dishware. I pulled up behind one of the thrift shops that I frequently go to. There, you pull up and the guy comes out, he helps you with your boxes. Well, a woman pulled up behind me and she saw what I had. She said, "Oh, my daughter's getting married and I'm giving her a shower. And it's gonna be like a tea party theme. Could I have those?" And I thought, well, why not? I'd like to help her out. And then she actually kind of looked at my box. She said, "Oh, that's okay. I'll take the whole box." Well, I think I knew better right then. There comes the guy. I'm giving her the box. He walks back and gets his manager, who comes out and scolds the heck out of both of us. This was going to go to the thrift shop, and the money was going to go to whatever the charity was. They supported, etc. Anyway, I gave them to her. And in retrospect, I should have said, yes, you can have them, but let's pull up here, and pulled up away from the prying eyes of the thrift shop staff. Definitely my error, but I was kind of annoyed at him, and I haven't gone back there since. What are your thoughts here? Story 5. When I was in middle school, I was in the chorus. We had a special Christmas concert in mid-December. The stage costume was black dress pants, or a skirt for the girls, a nice white top, and black, preferably shiny, dress shoes, none of which were in my closet. I had 2 weeks to assemble the outfit. My mother was working every day up until the show, so the task fell on me. Age 12 to 13, barely any interest in fashion. And my father knew nothing about women's fashion. We borrowed a white silk blouse from my petite, stylish grandmother and found a pair of black heels at Payless, but I still needed a skirt or pants. And so my father, brother, age 9, and I made a trip to the family's usual thrift/secondhand clothing store. The store was located near a wealthy neighborhood, so it was a bit more upscale than most consignment shops. We had no idea where to start, but luckily a sweet old sales lady was able to help us pick out a few items. After striking out a few times, I tried on a black silk pencil skirt. It was dated, very 80s looking, but fit like a glove. When I modeled it, the clerk and my father both smiled, agreeing, "That's the one." Naturally, my brother chose that moment to ask, "Are you wearing underwear under that?" Loud enough for everyone in the store to overhear. My father sputtered in anger and dragged my brother outside to sit in the unheated car for the rest of the trip. We still laugh about it to this day, except for my brother, who claims he doesn't remember it. Story 6. I was in a thrift store that had changing stalls with curtains, and the mirrors were outside the stall on a stage-like platform. So you would try something on, come out, and look in the mirror. Well, I was trying on these super cool pants, but they had zero stretch and a slight tear in one of the seams on the back of the pants. But they fit perfectly, and I was planning on repairing the small tear if I got them. My friend was in the changing stall across from me, so we came out to show each other what we tried on. As I flaunted these pants, just stepping up to the platform in front of the mirror, I hear this insanely loud rip. The whole backside of the pants ripped down my ass and to the back of my knee. I was wearing a thong, and you could see everything. My friend, of course, died laughing, which drew the attention of the many shoppers around us and the other people in the changing stalls. It was a busy Saturday, so the store was packed. Luckily, this wasn't my local thrift spot where I might have run into people I knew, but it was very embarrassing at the moment. The workers felt bad and didn't charge me for the pants and gave me a discount on another item I bought, so it turned out to be a win in the end. Story 7. I was wearing a really cool electric blue shirt for the band The Doors. At the register, the employee was, "Oh, cool, so you like The Doors?" I look at the Doors exiting the store, look at him and say, "Yeah, they are really clean," only to realize he was asking about my shirt. He was probably about college age, and I just about died right then and there, and never wore the shirt again, and have since then held a personal grudge against The Doors. But it was horribly embarrassing. Story 8. I found a broken wooden rocking horse in the yo section that had splinters and rusty screws out the wazoo and took it to the counter at the front to be disposed of before it savaged a child. I explained this. The employee asked if I wanted to buy it. I looked down at the obviously destroyed and dangerous object and said no. I would like it to be thrown out so kids don't get hurt. The employee stared at it for a second and said, "Okay," and then continued what she'd been doing before I came up. I asked if she could maybe please throw it away now, and she did without looking at me or saying anything. I then made the fatal mistake of posting about this odd exchange on Reddit and got a load of people calling me an a-hole and the wrong kind of customer, etc. Because obviously she must not have throwaway power and or is neurodivergent and hired only to do whatever she was doing in that binder and nothing else, even though she was doing it at the checkout counter alone. They might be right, but they were also needlessly aggressive, and I felt guilty and embarrassed even though I know that I was very polite and trying to help keep kids safe. So half a thrift story and half a Reddit story, story 9. My friend saw a basket on the floor with no one around. In it was a weird swan glass sculpture that was really ugly. She started making fun of it before a woman came over and said it was her basket. To walk back from joking about it, My friend asked her what she was going to do with it. The lady said she was going to resell it. Fast forward a few minutes, and we are walking down another aisle talking. I'm telling my friend how much I dislike reseller buying things, so the people who genuinely need the stuff at a lower cost don't have options to get what they need. We walk around the corner, and the lady was standing there as earshot. Double oops. I stand by my statement, though. Story 10. Op. I was a person who got their purse picked up out of a cart, but this was a pretty shady dude, and I barked at him pretty hard, and I felt bad about it because he immediately said, "I'm so sorry. I saw the Vans tag, and my girlfriend loves Vans. I thought it was for sale." I could see how he thought that, because it was on top of a shirt I'd planned to buy, and it probably looked like the shirt tag was on the purse. So we laughed it off. I apologized for yelling. He said it was totally legit to yell if someone's taking your purse, and I told him I'd thrifted it from that store. So fair that. Story 11. I found a cute snakeskin purse laying on a couch. Threw it in my cart and kept looking around. A little later, it was announced if anyone found a black purse, please turn it in. The owner of the lost purse looks in my cart and starts yelling at me that I was stealing her purse. I should mention that I never looked inside, but it felt empty. Anyhow, I'm telling her the announcement was for a black purse, not a gray snakeskin. How would I know? She was cussing me out, and everyone was looking at me like I'm a thief. Story 12. Just yesterday, I left my thrifted bomber jacket on a chair next to me while my friend and I were assembling a hammock frame, and a woman very nearly took my coat with my wallet inside. She was super apologetic, and we chatted about where I got it and had a good laugh. The hammock frame was bought and fit perfectly on my friend's balcony. Story 13. An employee showed me a shirt. They don't usually do that unless you ask. I don't know why he did it, and asked if I liked it. I was like, "Oh, absolutely not," because it was really not my style. And he went, "Absolutely not." And then I realized I maybe hurt his feeling. Story 14. My preteen kid liked to go thrifting with me, and about a month ago, he pointed out something he found disturbing to me on one of the home goods aisle. It was a thick, firm, pink rose, about the length of a hand. He had to explain the pink rose, adult toy, to me. So I grabbed it off the shelf and walked it up to the register to let them know. The cashier picked it up and replied, "This is a dog chew toy." It in fact was a dog chew toy. I placed it in the pet section, but it sure did look the part. Story 15. Not thrifting, but at a garage sale. I hear a woman ask the owner, "Hey, what's the price of this purse?" I had been there for a while and it was like, "Purse?" I didn't see any bags here. Turn around and she is holding my purse that I had put down because clearly something shiny had caught my eye. So I really try to make sure I wear a crossbody bag when out and about. So dumb. Can you say squirrel? Story 16. Browsing at a Salvation Army in Chicago and was looking at the blankets. At the end of the row were flags for sale, so I went to take a look. Lo and behold, I found a Confederate flag for sale. Found a young African-American worker and pointed the flag out, but she didn't understand why I stopped them. I had to explain to them that it's a bad flag, and it hit them. They immediately yanked it down and rushed to the back room to get rid of it. I was shocked they did not know what that flag represents. Story 17. I was trying to teach my 4-year-old son how to budget and do math by giving him like $5 and telling him that he could pick whatever he wanted, but it has to fit within the $5. Some sweet lady overheard me and thought we were poor and came over and tried to shove money into my hand. It was such a nice gesture, but also humiliating, and I really didn't need the money. I was just trying to reach my son a valuable life lesson. Story 18. For some reason, I decided to put a long, loud fart sound as my ringtone, and I usually would put my phone on silent when out and about. This day, I forgot to put my phone on silent, so of course, someone decided to call me when I was walking through the aisles of a crowded thrift shop. Story 19. Not so much embarrassing for me, but more second-hand embarrassment. Our thrift store has those circular racks with a level on top and a level below that which is closer to the ground. I was squatting down looking through some shorts, and a lady backed right up with her cart and let out large fart. I immediately stood up and got out of there. Story 20. I was looking through the clothing racks, and there was this large, interesting-looking coat slung over top. I picked it up and was admiring it, turning it over, but then noticed it had a horrible smell and felt dirty. I said, "Ew, gross." Then I realized it was a person's coat. She was looking at me like, "MTF, are you doing with my coat?" Story 21. XGF made me get rid for these Coca-Cola glasses. I'm pretty sure I'm the one that dropped them off at Goodwill. Months later, I see these Coca-Cola glasses at Goodwill and think, those are nice, I should buy them. Don't have the girl, but I still have the glasses. Story 22. I was once at the register of a thrift store checking out, and a woman came up and asked the cashier if they had changing room. I said, "No, you have to eyeball it." Lo and behold, she had one eye that pointed in a different direction. Yeah, I got a dirty look. Story 23. I was digging through bulk bins at Goodwill and unknowingly grabbed a sex toy. When I noticed, I flinched and it flew into the air and I yelled. Definitely got some looks. Story 24. Once while I was thrifting, I found a jumpsuit on the rack. It was the same jumpsuit I was wearing. A couple of other times I've stumbled upon an item I already have bit, not while I was wearing it. Story 25. Damn, I would never leave my purse unattended in a shopping cart in any store, and certainly not in a thrift store. She should have been thankful you weren't a thief. Hopefully she learned a lesson. Story 26. I split the seat of my pants within a minute of walking into a store once. I did have a jacket I tied around my waist, but unfortunately couldn't find anything my size to replace the pants. Story 27. I worked at a St. Vincent de Paul when I was in middle school. There was this strange owl statue that was on the shelves for as long as anyone who worked there could remember. It was about 2 feet tall of painted ceramic with wild yellow eyes. So one day I'm working the register when suddenly there's a loud crash and a lady scream, "Ooh my!" Turns out she accidentally knocked the owl statue over. I was too young to know what the white stuff in the little plastic baggies was at the time. But I remember my manager said it must have been tens of thousands of dollars worth of substances. Story 28. I don't work at Goodwill, but as an avid shopper there, I once found a pair of men's black suede dress shoes for $10. It turned out to be a $600 pair of Italian designer shoes. Bad. Story 29. There was a guy who had committed some minor kind of crime, and the only punishment was community service. So he went with the Salvation Army, doing donation pickups at houses, businesses, etc. So apparently the Salvation Army has a policy where the people working on the truck get to buy one item out of the day's pickup for like $5. This guy, he noticed that this one old lady had donated a guitar case that had a guitar in it. So he bought that figuring there might be something decent in it. Turns out it was a vintage, like late 50s, early 60s Fender Stratocaster. The thing not only had zero signs of any sort of wear and tear or damage, probably got played only a few times, but it still had all the original documentation, tags, etc. in the case. Thing ended up selling at auction for tens of thousands of dollars. Story 30. I got an Armani suit for $3 at Goodwill. If you are willing to wade through the crap tons of ugly ties, you can often get a nice silk tie that probably cost $80 to $120 for $3. My roommate's a whole brother donated some of our things to the Goodwill because his new girlfriend didn't think he should keep our things in his closet. We had just moved 3 states away and couldn't fit everything in one trip, so he promised to hold on to a few things until we could come back and get them. When she called to inquire as to when we could pick them up, he said, "Oh, yeah, I don't have them anymore. Anna and I took all those boxes to Goodwill last week. Sorry." So somewhere in an NC Goodwill, there was an antique sewing machine that had been in my family for 4 generations, my roommate's paternal grandmother's engagement ring, an escort Buddha pendant from my grandmother, a $400 porcelain figurine from Italy circa 1800s that was passed down through my roommate's family, not to mention pictures, moments, clothing, some furniture or small appliances, and other items of both monetary and sentimental value. All gone because that a hole couldn't make a 3-minute phone call to say he didn't want to store our things anymore. We didn't sue, but only because my roommate didn't want to start a family feud, and he wouldn't have been able to pay a settlement anyways. He was still being partially supported by my roommate, who was helping him pay some of his bills and car payment. Suing him would be like suing her. Yes, he was a dip crap, and so is his girlfriend. He had no idea there were family heirlooms in the boxes. Karen Face just decided she wanted more space for her clothes in the hall closet one afternoon, and they loaded everything up and dropped it all off. We had intended to get a storage space, but Git, Mother Ducker, offered his spare closet. The agreement was that he would keep our things for 3 months, until the next long weekend, and then we'd come pick them up. He gave our stuff away 2 weeks before we had planned on going to get it, and didn't say anything until a week later when my roommate was finalizing plans to head down there. We called the Goodwill, and they were helpful, but unfortunately nothing ever came of it. They remembered my sewing machine. It had been sold for $80 the day after it was donated. The figurine went for $3 the day before I called. No one remembered seeing the ring or escort pendant. The manager admitted an employee probably pocketed them. They never made it to the floor. The only consequences were that Git Mother Ducker got cut off financially by my roommate, who had been helping support his stupid ass. We didn't need to vandalize the car. He couldn't keep up with the payments after he was cut off, so it was repossessed. Yes, we should have taken the sentimental and valuable things first, but we had one car and had to prioritize what was absolutely necessary. Clothes and dishes made the cut. Knickknacks did not. Life's a Karen, and hindsight is 20/20. Story 32. When I had purchased my first home, my mother bought a full set of china for me as a present from a thrift store with a total cost of $10. I proceeded to use these dishes for a year before I went to the Philadelphia Art Museum. As I was walking in the back entrance, I believe the rocky steps are the front, I went left through a small hallway. There were some display cases there, and I was astonished to see my dishes behind protective glass. It was Russell Wright's Casual by Iroquois, and I had a complete set of turquoise. It was a pretty nifty find to have a piece of Americana. Story 33. A dude I knew worked at Goodwill. He was one of the people that sorted all the donations that came in and said if he found cash in the pockets, they would keep it. He would find cash regularly. Story 34. My mom donated pajamas to the Salvation Army along with a bunch of other clothes that she hid her $1,000 emergency cash in and didn't realize it till a few weeks later. Story 35. My friend goes to Goodwill on the off chance of getting things for really cheap. Found a box of magic cards for 20 bucks, bought it, opened it to find about 20 beta duels, goes for around 100 plus each, goes for around 100 plus each when he got them. Goodwill employees, what is the craziest thing you've ever found being donated? A large box full of used sex toys, ropes, and other restraints, including a black leather bag type thing that only had a small hole. A mom brought in a box and said it was stuff from her son's room. It had smoking accessories, also had a bag of substances worth at least $50. I may or may not have gone through the box prior to alerting my manager and pocketed the substances, Zippo, grinder, and a small glass pipe that looked like my chihuahua that the mouthpiece was the hole. A lady brought in a bunch of stuff that was from her dad's estate she thought wasn't worth much. She said they were things his mother had held onto. I immediately started a Google search on some of the nicer items. There was a complete dishware set that was worth more than my house, a doll collection worth twice that, and some silver pieces worth about $500 a piece, and some of his mother's old jewelry worth a crap ton as well. My manager pulled her aside, she was still in the store shopping, and said, "I think you made a mistake and gave us the wrong boxes." She discreetly told her to get the stuff appraised before donating anything. She later came back and let us know she had the items appraised along with some furniture she was just going to sell on Craigslist. She said that all the items in total were appraised at least $1 million and could be sold at auction for $2-3 million. Story 2. A cat in a donation box that really ducking stank. A gigantic rubber underwear with a gigantic crap turd stuck to it. A gym bag full of shotgun shells. I think it was probably used in a bank robbery, so they dropped it in a donation box. A 100,000 Iraqi dollar, which I found out was worth like 5 cents a broken popcorn machine, which I repaired and fixed. I did some research and found out the good theater popcorn and salt. We had a line of employees 30 deep. They told me we can't be messing around like this all the time and sold off the popcorn cart. A mismatch of drum kit that I would occasionally practice on had it for quite some time before a regional manager came in and see me play it while somebody was beatboxing. Damn outsiders mess everything up. Story 3. I found countless bags from the same house where someone was so large they had to make their own pants out of, I'm assuming, sheets and curtains. Imagine drawstring paisley hammer pants. Like my entire months-long career sorting donations, I kept finding more bags. This store was in the richer area of the larger city that was nearest to my very small town. I had to drive 30 miles to when I was 16 because they paid $6.50 an hour in the 90s. And I worked with a lot of popular girls from my school. I was not popular. We would see aside anything we wanted and place it by the dumpster and swing around and pick it up after our shift. One girl I remember put on so many clothes under her clothes to take home, she looked like Joey from Friends when he wore all of Chandler's clothes. Coworkers would come visit their popular friends and just hand them a bag of clothes they didn't want to put back. And the girls visiting were like, "We can just throw them out the window of the car." The 90s were wild. Story 4. Former employee. We got a statue of 2 bears ducking. That cracked me up. Sex toy, used diapers, a surprising amount of money in wallets, purses. With the sex toy, we had these 2 older ladies that worked in sorting. One of them got one in her bag of donations and started waving it around, not knowing what it was. Once we told her what it was, she dropped it and was mortified. I was laughing. Also, someone donated a bag full of latex gear. My coworker had it all spread out on the floor. I worked with a bunch of guys in a warehouse for Goodwill in New England. I'm a chick. And we all were laughing and just having a good time, imagining why they were donated. Other than that, my favorite things donated were books that were 200 plus years old. I loved looking through them and just awestruck. Something that old survived that long and was just donated. I really felt the books should be in a library or museum. Story 5. I worked at Goodwill for 3 years. I was a processor in the back and I've seen it all. Sex toys were a weekly occurrence. Mice sometimes. Lots of things that smelled like cat piss or covered in hair. I'd say 80% of items donated are trash. People didn't want to pay to take to the dump. And that's being generous. But I did love that job. It was always entertaining. I found a full script of substances before. My favorite was actually finding addict in our dumpsters when I had to take the trash out. Always a fun surprise. It was in a kind of sketch neighborhood, so the customers were always a trip too. I really do miss that job. It was never boring, and my brain liked how fast-paced I had to work to meet our production goals. I'd have stayed had my GM not suggested she might not approve my time off for my wedding so she could go camping. I love the chaos. Story 6. I used to work in a charity shop in the G, and a woman brought in all her dead husband's possessions in the back of her car. I offered to empty the car while she had a cuppa with the manager as she was still grieving. Then, I found the casket. It was a decorative, rectangular wooden casket with a man's name on. I solemnly brought it into the back where she said, "Ah, my husband's ashes casket. Don't worry, we scattered them." I placed it on the sorting table, then she left. After a full staff discussion, we decided to place the casket on some silk on a high shelf in the back corner of the sorting area with a candle at either side. As a shrine, it was still there. Three years later, and I suspect it's still there now with the new manager, as she was the one to pick the candles when we placed it on the shelf. Story 7. A substances spoon with the handle bent backwards that made it out on the floor. I found it in the big bin of silverware when I was working up front. I'm an ex-addict, so I knew what it was immediately and brought to the back. I asked the rest of the employees if they knew what it was and why it shouldn't have made it out on the sales floor. Everyone was quiet except for my coworker, who was an older woman who was very much Karen-like in nature. She said, "I priced that and put it out on the floor. It's a spoon for sugar designed to hang off the side of bowl." Needless to say, I took great pleasure in telling her what it was. The look on her face was simply priceless. Story 8. There have been a few things I've had and been witness to. 1. Opened up a trumpet case to find someone's male underwear with skid marks all over it. 2. Pills/medicine, legal and not. 3. An urn full of someone's ashes. 4. Lots of sexy time toys, used and new. Money, not me, but another lady found $1,500 in cash in a purse one day. 6. Dead mice and dead bugs, especially cockroaches. 7. My all-time favorite good item, a sealed version of the old Super Mario Bros. Arcade version, I think, for NES that was sealed and brand new yet. It sold in the online area for about $75K, I believe. The man who bought it flew his private plane to our location to pick it up personally. Story 9. We used to get cremains quite frequently. Kind of bothered me that someone was just sitting in a jar with no thought to their afterlife. I would mark the date of donation on them and keep them around for a couple months until I was sure no one was coming back for them. Then I would bury them in a shady back corner of a local cemetery. Story 10. Date abuse substances, I think from the 70s, 80s. It was in packaging as though it were legal. In the back of the package it read something like, "Use it on your wife and let the magic happen," sort of thing. Story 11. At a northern CT Goodwill, not my store, a styrofoam box was left outside the donation area, and inside was a heart. The box was for medical transport. This was a secondhand story from an employee who worked there. Craziest and best one was the time I bought a VHS tape from the store I worked at for 125 cents, and inside was $1,600 a year in an envelope labeled Las Vegas. The bills were old, from the 80s. I told no one and used the money towards a move to a new apartment with some friends back when rent was like $500 in my area. Story 12. Former employee here. My wife and I worked together there, her doing goods and me doing clothes. She came across a cardboard box with a shipping label on it, and inside were ceramic casts of hands. It was inside protective styrofoam pieces to prevent it from breaking. We called the manager over, and she said she would look into it further since it looked like it was supposed to be shipped to someone in a town about an hour away. Never heard anything else about it. Story 13. Being in a richer neighborhood, I always checked all the pockets of the clothes for money. Duh. And one day I felt something in this pair of obvious old man trousers, in the pocket that is the smallest in front, that buttoned closed. Usually for change, I was like, yes, finally. I undid the button to find an acorn. I could only imagine his final walk before he died, pocketing the acorn for his favorite squirrel at the park. I don't know why that still sticks with me. Story 14. My former manager told me the guy I replaced was fired because his response to finding a grenade in the donation bin was to 1. Pick it up out of the bin, forgivable. Maybe he thought it was a toy. 2. Upon realizing what it was, cross the room with it in his hand. What the heck, man? 3. Walk into the manager's office and hand it to her. What the heck, man? 4. Say, here you go. Then turn around and walk out. My man, what the heck? Story fiend. I've gotten literal bags of trash. Someone once donated a turtle. I've also found a whole bunch of clothes that were so rotten that you would have easily mistaken them for clothes from a corpse. But possibly the worst thing I've seen donated at my store would be a whole case of semen sample tubes. I'm not joking. Someone actually donated semen, literal cum, to our store, and to make things worse, the weird plastic bag they were all placed inside was labeled expired. Story 16. I never worked at a Goodwill, but at a Salvation Army thrift store for a couple of months. In that time, I saw many used sex toys that we'd sort and throw into the trash. Story 17. A coworker of mine found a piggy bank packed with substances. She said she tasted it, and she knows it's the real deal. It was handed over to the cops. She never explained why she knew what substances taste like, and nobody asked. Actually, I did, and she asked me why I think she knows what it tastes like, then cackled about it, possibly while high. I'm very surprised she didn't get in any trouble. Story 18. 1. A sex toy. 2. I don't even remember what it was now, an old dollhouse maybe? But it had a lot of live black widows nesting in and around it. No idea how they got it to us. Donor sorted it, and it got to the wares table, with no one being bit once. Story 19. A box with random stuff had an urn with ashes in it. No name or anything. I think it was turned into the cops, because management didn't know who else to call about it. One of my coworkers joked, "Hey, somebody finally got their wish to have Goodwill be their final resting place." Story 20. Many urns with ashes, cooler full of substances, aquarium with a snake still in it, kittens, and of course used sex toys of all sizes, shapes, and colors. Story 21. Not Goodwill, but I worked at the returns desk for an online fulfillment center. I found a tooth in one box, a slice of meatloaf in a baggie in another, more clothing items that smelled like pee than I care to remember. The grossest was a shirt that had poop on it. Story 22. Live turtle in a complete terrarium, cat mixed with clothes, badge and service weapon of a local police officer. I doubt that went over well after someone else came to pick it up. Story 23. An older lady donated her breasts. I guess she had a surgery of some sort and no longer needed them. A car, a bag of shoes with probably 1,000 silverfish. Most of the stuff was pretty standard old people that passed stuff or college kids getting rid of their childhood. Story 24. Former employee, live rattlesnakes. Like a bunch in buckets and tiny glass terrariums. Some got out over the night. They were donated and hid in other dropped-off boxes. Was a morning of a lot of screaming and smacking snakes with brooms. Story 25. A very large box of adult films with some random items. Guy got it from buying a storage unit. Also, people could buy stuff from like Amazon, I think, and have it sent to Goodwill. How many times we got sex toys? Story 26. I had a gentleman pull up to the donation center in a U-Haul box truck full of high-end designer handbags and shoes. He had found out that his wife was an escort and had been given all of this stuff from her Johns. Goodwill employees, what's the weirdest thing someone has donated? Story 1. I live in UK, so I'll answer based in a charity shop I worked in here. We had a few bad things. People clearly thought we were a place to just dump stuff without going the skip. Some examples. Women's underwear with a used sanitary product in them. Some old moldy curtains or something, some kind of fabric. It was so damp, moldy, and old that the moment you picked it up, it was falling apart. Some older ladies bought this in, saying their brother had passed away and they were sorting his things. They came in with bags and bags of items. Clearly, he'd been hoarding things. Instead of going through it, they just brought the whole lot to us. So much of it was unsanitary and beyond any use to anyone. The amount of stuff they brought in filled the stick took, but overall we got about 10 to 20 items that were actually sellable. There was also an occasion where the person who opened the store up that day found a box outside. In the box was a rabbit with a broken leg and a note saying, "Please help me, my owners can't afford my care." We weren't even an animal charity shop, so it's not like they thought we had access to vets in there or anything. We raised funds for a charity based with old people. Story 2. My sister used to work at Goodwill, and one time she was working a shift where a lady came in and donated a bunch of old clothes. The clothes ranged around to spandex, biker shorts, graphic tees, and there were a bunch of t-shirts that had holes and rips in them. That wasn't even the weirdest thing. The lady had a whole box full of old underwear that she was donating, but what was worse was that she had told my sister that she hoped Goodwill had a washing machine because she didn't have enough time to wash all the clothes, that including the underwear. So to clear it up, she was donating old and used underwear, which goes against their code for safety. My sister, obviously disgusted, and told the lady that they legally could not donate it for the safety of others. I guess the lady was offended by that and took it as an insult, saying that she had some sort of disease and that's why they couldn't sell it. Either way, the lady was pissed and refused to take the underwear with her, so she left it on the side of the drop-off area and drove away. The manager had to carefully pick the used underwear up and throw them away. Moral of the story, don't donate underwear. It's gross, and you're better off buying an expensive pair at the store than using someone else's germs at a thrift shop. Story 3. Not an employee, but I was in my local Goodwill one day, and they have a locked case near the front where they keep the expensive items. There was a couple game systems, probably costume jewelry, lots of other odds and ends, and probably a half dozen or so sex toys. Story 4. We operated near a psychiatrics hospital, and one day we had a walk-in donor couple, a caretaker, and a disheveled-looking woman who was cradling a tattered and dirty child-sized doll. These dolls are handmade by the patient and used as some kind of therapy doll. I imagine as part of her recovery as she had to give up the doll, but it was clear this was a very difficult process. It was like watching somebody being forced to give up their child. In their eyes, this functionally was their child. It was especially heartbreaking because once the item was tallied and the nonprofit paid, it went straight into the trash bin. It was extremely unsanitary and therefore unsellable. Story 5, not GW, but I work at an animal shelter. People donate odd things. One day, a woman dropped off a bunch of boxes. All boxes were marked with contents: 5 comforters, 14 towels, and so on. As the boxes piled in the hallway and I started putting them away, I came across one marked 25 hams. The box was placed or kicked by the fridge. What the heck? What are we gonna do with 20 ducking hams? I start the laborious process of cleaning out the fridge. Looking at the box, I estimated they were small hams, so I managed to make room for about 6, 8 if I cram and slam the door. I go to reach in for the first ham, and to my surprise, the box is filled with 2 cloth shear-looking things. That was it in the decent-sized box. I'm confused at this point. The box was marked 2 shams. Not odd, I just really wanted to share the story. We have also received other times good share of sex toys, cherry tomatoes, proper dining set of dishes, urns, kids' games. Story 6. So basically, how do I say this? Oh, I know. This guy walks in with a ducking couch. What a freak, right? This was no ordinary couch, however. You see, it was completely hot pink. What a Karen Amirite, guys. Probably had spatters of semen on it too, yikes. So then I got a little irritated, right? I say, you dare bring something of such pathetic quality to the sacred palace that is Goodwill. I will admit that I got a little carried away, so then we started screaming at each other for a solid 2 minutes. Anyways, the long and short of it is that I hit his head and then got fired immediately for absolutely no reason. Story 7. A bag full of sex toys, whips, and chain. Unzipped the bag to check inside and quickly zipped it right back up. Another would be poop. Lots of dried up poop. Story 8. I worked at Goodwill 2002, 2003, so much weird stuff and a lot of trash. Lots of sex toys, a boat that got stolen off the lot. A church came by once with like 3 carloads of clothes, but they were all wet because they got rained on. We explained we can't take wet clothes because they mildew and would throw them away. They didn't care, just unloaded it straight to the dumpster. Also, FYI, Goodwill does not wash clothes before they're put out. Found a brick of substances. It was probably about 2 Alnayelbs, old creepy wooden dolls, and a U-Haul full of Betamax movies. Story 9. Well, I'm not an employee, but was a frequenter of secondhand shops. I once bought a videotape of Cinderella. I was halfway through enjoying the movie when it cut out and the scene suddenly changed to an adult film. This went on for about 40 seconds and then went back to the movie. That was pretty weird. Story 10. I remember when I used to work at Goodwill, there was a creepy guy in an old blue sedan that donated a trash bag. The policy is at my store, we had to smell the bag to make sure it didn't smell like a heavy smoker. When I smelled, it was clear that it smelled old. So I opened the bag and screamed because it was full of doll limbs. My boss wondered why I screamed and I showed her the bag and ended up throwing it away. Story 11. That looks like it'll have a bunch of unique and random cool stuff, but it's just going to be 1. Sex stuff used, 2. Literal crap, 3. Gross hair. Story 12. It was a Goodwill sequel furniture and home goods donation center. One time someone left an armoire out back. That's not atypical by any means. When we went to pick it up and get it inside, the entire thing fell apart like a Jenga tower. Somebody actually delicately balanced the wooden components of the whole thing well enough that it looked fine until you moved it. The strangest thing, but looking back, a hilarious prank played on us. Story 13. I also want to throw out that Goodwill does not launder or clean things. It's too expensive, so just so everyone knows those sex toys are as is. Much like the rest of this group, I found a box of sex toys, poop-filled pants, and a blow-up doll. Money is usually forgotten in clothes and occasionally substances. Story 14. A big-ass black bag of sex toys. This bag was industrial size. You couldn't buy a bag like this in a store. The funny, weird thing was that it was this old lady who donated it, too. Another big-ass black bag filled with Levi's 501 jeans. Not the weird part, but seeing as how they were all brand new with tags still on them was pretty weird to me. Story 15. Not an employee, but a friend helped there every once in a while. In a big box, there was a prosthetic leg. She didn't know what to do about it, so she left it alone. She said it had blood on the knee joint thing, bite marks on the foot, and smelled terrible. I think she stopped helping after that. Story 16. Not an employee, but I got some MCU 2P military issue gas mask and sealed canisters, handheld Geiger counter, some archaic 1955 mining equipment, and maps denoted with uranium deposits in a large wood ammo crate. It was from an old prospector. They had it labeled as a cosplay trunk. Story 17. So I was working at Goodwill last year, the time period where I got my second cat, and this man came in. He was known in my area for being wealthy but a little bit insane. He donated a ducking apple. Story 18. One time a woman came in with 2 bags. She gifted us one of them with a smile and then ran off. She was in a big hurry. I sifted through it and it was all trash. She had obviously given us the wrong bag. Story 19. I was working in a Goodwill when I was in college, and the weirdest thing I've seen someone donate was a ducking brick of substances. It was surprising. We called the police and the guy got arrested. It's still funny to think about. Story 20. Not me, but a friend who worked for Goodwill for years found some live artillery that someone donated. He went to dispose of it and it exploded in his hand. This happened in Austin during the time of the Austin bomber. Story 21. Not an employee, but my nearest thrift store once had a window full of adult diapers. 3 or 4 medical-looking ones, and 1 pile with some kind of teddy bear pattern. Story 22. I worked at a reuse store, and someone donated a tarp. As we unrolled it, a giant turd smear rolled down it. We have to assume it was intentional due to its human-like consistency and central placement. Story 23. Had someone donate a bag of their hair. They were happy too, saying it will make a nice wig. I puked a little just now thinking about it. Story 24. Not an employee, but was shopping there when I came across a large box filled with nothing but heart-shaped retro alarm clocks. Had to be like 100 of them, all identical. Story 25. We had once bought a VHS player from Goodwill, and it had a Scooby-Doo tape in it, and our other option was one with a home tape titled Family Reunion in the Grandma's Funeral. Story 26. Not Goodwill, but once at the Demo Mormon version of Goodwill, found a hookah set in a case with coals and tobacco. Was listed for $5, so I had to buy it. Story 27. Someone donated a large box full of sex toys. Some used, most in unopened packaging. You know, for all of those times we've gone to Goodwill for sex toys. Story 28. Used to share a house with a guy who worked at the Salvation Army store. He brought home like 10 pounds of packaged deer meat that I guess someone donated. Story 29. When I used to work as the material handler/sorter, I found a small, mini vibrating sex toy. Definitely thankful for the gloves I had. Story 30. I work at a thrift store that is not Goodwill. The weirdest thing that we keep getting donated is breast pumps. Yes, like for milk. We recycle them on site. Redditors who work at Goodwill or other donation center resale shops. What is the weirdest, most disgusting or nastiest things you've had someone try to donate? In high school, I would volunteer at a thrift store to get the service hours we needed each year. The store was run and staffed by a bunch of Protestant conservative grandparents. A bag of sex toys. One of the ladies opened a purse and it was full of sex toys. Story 2. I did community service at a Goodwill a few years back. In 6 weekends, I saw several sextas, at least 3 turds, and lots of other gross crap. I eventually worked my way into operating the large compactor in the back. They take all the undesirable clothing that is either too dated or otherwise wouldn't sell, and compact them into huge 1,000 llama bales that get shipped overseas to Africa. That's where the natives get Coca-Cola t-shirts. I hid stuff in every bale I made, like bowling balls, toys, and once an entire television. One day a box of sex toys came in, and one of the kids up front brought it back to me, and we put it in the middle of a bale of clothing. Story 3. I used to volunteer at the local interval home. This one year near Christmas, this old couple donated this beautiful china cabinet. When I say beautiful, I mean absolutely gorgeous. So we get this beauty all dusted off and we decided to take a look inside. I will never forget the stench that inhabited my nostrils that day. The odor was one that could completely wipe out the existence of a pack of vigorous orang-outang. Even at the smallest waft, there it was, a small plastic baby doll. Seems innocent enough, right? Seeing as how this disgusting seeing was coming only from a small plastic toy, we were mesmerized. We took the baby doll out, and my coworker shakes it slightly. We hear a sloshing. What the heck? Out spills a load of crap, literally. Watery diarrhea mixed with what could only be vomit. Ducking thou. We sold the cabinet for $2,000. Joke's on them. They just bought the most disgusting air freshener they will ever have. Never trust them old fogies. They're full of crap. Story 4. Piss-soaked clothes were unfortunately common. Shotgun shells were found at least twice amongst clothing. I'm told a stick of dynamite was found once. A bag of sex toys. Bags of actual trash. Story 5. This happened to a friend of mine. As most people just throw their cloths in bags and drop them off to Goodwill, some douchebags decided that they should mix in a lot of crap with the clothes. So my friend goes to retrieve the clothes from the bag, as he has done so many times before without looking, and bam, basically reaches into a bag of moist feces. Story 6. Worked at Goodwill throughout high school. 1. A set of soiled sex toys. They got thrown into a big box with other donations, including some clothes that had already been tagged and sold before the sex toys were discovered. The health department had to come out and investigate. 2. A real old military grenade. The bomb squad had to evacuate the whole store and neighboring businesses. They put it in one of those metal canisters where they try to detonate it, but they never told us if it actually blew up or not. The kind of people that shop there also make for plenty of interesting stories. 1. Someone donated one of those plastic igloos you put outside for dogs. A lady purchased it and we put a sold sign on it till she could pick it up. Another lady wanted to buy it, but wanted us to ignore that it was sold already. She got more and more angry and walked away. She later came back, crawled inside and took a dump, told us about it and quickly left. 2. We had this old lady that would come in every Sunday afternoon with a big empty purse. She would quickly walk to the back, stuff her purse with as many coffee mugs as she could, and run out. The cops would either show up too late or not come at all, and we weren't allowed to touch her. To my understanding, she still does this. Story 7. Channel bag full of condoms. Mason jar of someone's ashes. $4,000 in cash on redirected to the police. Sterling silver junk about 3 feet long, and bags of single socks. It baffles me. Story. I did some work at a massive charity sale. We usually raised around 30-40K for the homeless, so it was a pretty big sale. The weirdest thing we ever got was an opened box of gits. About half of the gits were missing from the box. Story 9. Both of my cousins work at the Goodwill here in our hometown. The older one said that there is this one middle-aged lady who about every 6 months brings in a big hull of 3 garbage bags filled with clothes she collects from her family and extended family. That's really great, but there's always a plastic supermarket bag hidden in between layers of clothes with used underwear. I mean, they say they are always unwashed, stained, and smelling used most times. She's been doing this for about 3 years, twice a year, and there is always that one surprise they have to make sure they handle carefully into the garbage. What is her thought process, I always wonder. Got to go to Goodwill this coming week. Also, that means new panties time. I'll just not wash and save them for them. Oh, and I'm sure some of you want to know how they know that they are hers. Story 10. Up until recently, I worked at a local thrift store, taking donations. The weirdest thing we ever got was a bag of cup holders and little statues of what looked like gnomes, except they were all junks. The gnomes were junks. The cup holders had engravings of a guy with a giant junk on them. Story 11. My wife and I were at a Goodwill, thrift shopping like it's going out of style, and I saw a piece of paper folded up into a small square with the name Tina written on the outside in permanent marker. It was taped closed. This, as we know, makes opening it a requirement. The letter was written in cursive and kind of shaky, so we thought it was from an old person. It started out fine. The author, who is a she, revealed later on, was apologizing for paying her rent late, so we know it's from an old person to her landlord. We continue on and it takes a turn for the weird. She begins to go into how, I can't believe I'm going to ask you this, tell you this, and prefacing the coming paragraphs. She continues to tell her landlord about how when she was younger, her older sister would treat her. At this point, my wife is telling me to stop reading and just throw it away. But that's not happening. She goes on to tell how this has made her not like people and not trust women, and that this is the reason her brother treats her so bad now. She then requests to have the landlord set up a hidden camera. She even has a script laid out. It was probably the creepiest thing I've ever come across. I considered saving it, but I decided to fold it back up and put it in a pair of shoes, making a fun surprise for someone, and letting the legend of the Tina letter live on. Story 12. I worked in a thrift store this summer. Most everything was pretty okay, but there was a week where the worst crap would come in. I went through plenty of ripped up trash bags full of what seemed to be homeless escort clothing. Basically, everything was crusty and smelled like piss and other unidentifiable awful things. Heels covered in crap, straight up trash, and the creepiest blanket I've ever seen. Also included were 30-ish NS cartridges. What the heck? Where do people find these things? Why would you donate shoes covered in crap? These are my questions now as I try to move on with life. Story 13. I volunteered at a thrift store for a rehab. Some of the strangeness I found, duffel bag with 3 cats inside. Didn't smell as bad as it sounds, so they were pretty old, but it still smelled pretty bad. A fully functional copper still, keep in mind. Rehab. Several cases of uranium glass in excellent condition, value, well over 6K, a little more than a dozen seashell sculpture clam people, all engaging in various and probably anatomically impossible acts. More than 20 cases of booze over the years, uncountable bags of substances, a live and very thirsty Pomeranian stuffed inside the inside jacket pocket of a suit, enough adult film to wallpaper a 3-story office building, aggregate over time, 3 urns with relatives' ashes, not from the same house, around 50 KA in 20s taped to the bottom of a chest of drawers, and its matching dresser. donated during a clean-out of a passed-away eccentric uncle. Family refused to accept the money back and just asked for a receipt. A full shipping pallet of expired Swedish fish. Still ate them, and they were delicious. The candy, not the animal. Full ammo reloading kit with shells, lead, caps, and about 200 rounds of finished ammo. Story 14. I volunteer at a charity shop once a week. We've had crap-stained underwear donated, furry handcuffs, and other sex toys. One of the weirdest things we got, though, was loads and loads of VH tapes of adult film. Seriously, like 20, 30 tapes maybe? They were mostly rubber and bondage stuff. A lot of them had a sci-fi theme. We just chucked them out. Story 15. I worked at one run by the Mormon church, so stuff was pretty tame. People would ditch old rentals, fridges, and stuff because they didn't want to pay what the county levied to pick up without a new Energy Star appliance. Then there was the time that someone donated an entire dresser full of locked drawers. When we cracked it, there were hundreds of adult mags and sex toys. On the flip side, with our clothing donations came expensive clothing and handbags. We had at least 100 Dolce & Gabbana, Louis Vuitton, Prada, Coach bags on hand at any given time in our collectibles lockdown cage. The store manager had an aversion to stocking them on the shelves in a locked glass case for some reason. He even had a task force familiar with fakes. The fakes would be sold immediately at a flat store rate, $5.30, while we checked comparable real bags and sold them at 30% of retail. One time we had a Rodeo Drive bespoke dress donated. The assistant store manager over clothing was notoriously glib, so he marked it at $50, while there was a $3,999 price tag attached to it. Due to our store's propensity for prosperous donors, our store was always racked with a mob every opening. The dress had been placed on the racks. We then had our morning devotional, a religiously centered speech and prayer. And during that devotional, the team lead had told the bigwig manager about the dress. The store opened as the employees dissipated from the devotional. Half of the store workers and all of the production workers were on the floor looking for the dress. It had been sold already in maybe 15 minutes' time, naturally, when the clothing would come in with bits and pieces of other departments' things. The clothing production workers were known for collecting one cheap bag and then filling it with things, mainly other bags. They then took out to their cars during smoke break. 3 employees were always in concert and wound up getting fired after one of the self-righteous reported them. Granted, it was their second strike. It only makes sense to skim from the donations and sell them, considering we made $8.25 an hour. We're employed a maximum of a year. The company paid no unemployment insurance, and the thieves were all single mothers. Story 16. 2 years, 2 different locations, in 2 different parts of Canada. It'll just list some of the obvious stuff. Sex toys, yeah, used. Mammy dolls, crap-stained underwear, bullets, rotting food. One time we found a large green ham mixed in with someone's clothes. Used diapers, piss-stained mattresses. People will just dump them at the donation area because they're too lazy and cheap to take it to the dump. Hilariously romance books from the 20s. Hell, even new ones. All men are big, burly super geniuses with billions of dollars and roguish good looks that want to settle down with a wife and have kids. And all the women are fresh out of a bad relationship, not looking for anything new. Unless the right guy comes by, that is. Does depressing count? Because if so, I found a handwritten note folded inside a book that was written by a woman to her father. Basically, it sounds like she hadn't talked to her father in quite a few years due to his alcoholism. She talked about how she had attempted to pass at one point, and after years of being without a father, she wanted to reach out to him, to get him help as well, and perhaps eventually patch things up again. I felt really dirty reading the note and folded it up and tossed it out. Those words weren't meant for me or anyone else. I can only hope things worked out for them. Seriously though, what the duck is wrong with people? Who willingly donates rotting food or crap-stained underwear? And I don't mean a skid mark or two. I mean full-on chocolate pudding in your pant kind of coverage. Do people think charitable organizations are there to dispose of their trash? Is it a joke? I honestly don't get it, but I wish only the worst on those people. Story 17. My wife runs a thrift store, and I am actively involved in helping sort donations and put stuff out on the floor. We see everything from crusty bed sheets and pillowcases to kids' clothes with poo stain. Not really gross, weird, nastiest, but definitely interesting. We got a garment bag full of men's suits one weekend. Nice suits. All of them were tailored, beautifully made custom suits with Gucci and YSL tags in the inner pockets, probably made by a tailor with YSL and Gucci fabric. Inside those breast pockets is what made these suits so special and memorable. We found business cards and note cards in almost every pocket, and not just any business cards. In every right-hand pocket were a few cards of the presumptive previous owner. They had a generic classic name, James A. Henry or John P. Forbes. I know the real name. These are close examples. Just a phone number, an international one, and that's it. In the other pocket were dozens of other biz cards and note cards with notes about places and times, sometimes names, nicknames. The biz cards in those pockets were written on too. Personality descriptions, physical traits, profile notes, etc. When I found these, my brain went nuts. I wanted to know who the F this guy is, and why he would leave these suits at a random thrift store, not a Goodwill or Salvation Army, in a not-so-well-known part of a city, with all this seemingly important information. I want to know who this guy was and what he did. I know this is just fantasy to me, and I'm probably wrong, but these suits seem to belong to a spy or agent or intelligence official of some sort. Maybe he got out of the game and wanted to throw his crap away but leave this little trail behind. Maybe he's just a regular guy with a bad memory. Who knows? I'm slowly researching and trying unsuccessfully to put together the puzzle, hoping to one day get an answer. Story 18. During my time at Goodwill, I've had people donate the following things: authentic 18th century dueling pistols, several substances, a cardboard box filled with 80s adult VHS tapes. Story 19. I used to work at a place that sold items on eBay for customers. This one lady came in with a box that had some sort of brown bag and long tube in it. Our policy was to research the item on eBay to see if it had sold in the past in order to inform the customer whether or not it was worth the fees we would charge. The only thing on the box was a brand name, and there was no markings on the bag inside, but I could tell it was pretty old. I was hoping I could find the product by looking up the brand name, but no luck. I couldn't find anything that had been sold with the brand name in the past, and I let her know that. She said, "Well, my nephew just sold one just like it a couple of weeks ago for $250. It's a medical antique." "Ma'am, what is it exactly?" I asked. "It's a douchebag. A 50-year-old douchebag," she yelled at me, a little frustrated with my ignorance. So I kindly told her that while we sell used items all the time, I don't think I'd be able to sell something that had been used so personally. Her response killed me. "Well, the last time it was used was probably 40 years ago, and back then they cleaned everything with vinegar. It's probably cleaner than anything you have in this store." Story 20. Well, I'm not sure if this counts, but I do have a story of accidentally donating something disgusting. When I was younger, still in diapers, I had a dollhouse. One day, I was playing with it, and since Rugrats was my favorite show at the time, I decided I'd be like Tommy and store one of the dolls in my diaper for later. I guess I was so caught up in playing that I didn't notice that my diaper was full of poop. I started crying and eventually decided to hide the doll under one of the doll couches. Then, I closed up the dollhouse and never played with it again. A while later, my mom donated it to Goodwill. She never knew about the poop doll. Not that bad, but I do feel bad for whoever discovered that doll. Story 21. I had to do 90 hours of community service working security at an ARC thrift store. Undergarments are always unpleasant. Mostly the store I worked at got a lot of junk though, and nothing too strange. My favorite donation was a giant 3-foot-tall whiskey bottle. My hometown has the greatest thrift store I've ever been in. At its height, you could find anything from classic vintage teas, Binford Meat Market, Can't Beat Our Meat, interesting art, and terribly labeled items, such as a back massager labeled as a sex toy. Story 22. I too volunteered at a thrift store for 2 years, every weekend, even after my community hours were finished. I did genuinely like it there. All the other old lady volunteers were friends of mine, but we did come across some pretty memorable donation. A garbage bag full of skid-marked underwear. This was hardly uncommon. People honestly believe thrift store shoppers are desperate enough to purchase their she-stained underwear. Apparently a yellowing bedpan. The best part is I live in a retirement community, so one of the other volunteers thought it would be worthwhile to sell it. And equally as alarming, someone bought it. Maternity bras crusted in sour breast milk? I don't know. We'd always get boxes just chock-a-block full of greasy McDonald's Happy Meal toys. Grossed me the duck out. Story 23. I worked at a children's consignment store for a few months. You know how sometimes your kid will have an explosive crap puke while you're out somewhere and you throw the diaper, outfit, and wipes all into the same bag so you can throw the whole thing away later? Make sure you throw it away, not mix it in with your clothing donations. It happened several times in the little bit of time I worked there. They changed their policy to include that clothes needed to be freshly laundered and not dropped off in trash bags. Story 24. Goodwill employee here. I've had people try to donate absolutely filthy outdoor toys. Playhouse, a wagon. I've seen people donate a bug full of used thongs and G-strings. Got a comforter that was absolutely soaked and smelled like death. Something about wet fabric is just gross. Story 25. I literally grew up in a used bookstore. My mother owned it from when I was 5 until I was 21. As a teen, I worked there, ringing up customers and taking trade-ins for used books. We traded at 2-1 on the cover price, with other little rules. I'd say about a quarter of the people who traded in books were disgusting. Here's a few gems in order from most frequent to least frequent. Roach droppings, spider webs, various dead bugs, live spiders, rat droppings, urine-stained pages, boxes of books which had been used as a litter box by a cat. However, hands down the worst was a woman who traded in 2 large bags full of those trashy series romance books. This woman was huge, like 400 pounds with a skin condition. The books looked okay, but smelled a little funny. I opened one up to check to see if there was something wrong and, well, hair everywhere. They covered the counter from just one 200 or so page book. Story 26. I briefly worked for the Salvation Army in 2001. Someone tried to donate a small desk, which was actually rotting. It had insects boring into it. Another person donated a small coffee table, which would have been a lot nicer if the underside hadn't been almost half covered with old wads of chewed gum. They couldn't plead ignorance either. The table had a transparent glass top. The only thing I could think was college town. Which brings me to what is easily the worst of the lot. Most people throw their clothes into bags when making these donations, as has already been said in previous comments. Every year, apparently, I was actually only there for one go at this. When the college students are leaving to go home, the store got massive donations of dirty laundry. That alone was nearly a job ender for me. There were cigarette butts, stains of every color, needles, various substances concealed cleverly enough that their previous owners forgot or lost track of them. Feces, urine, used tampons, just vile. Story 27. Worked at a local nonprofit for 4 years. A lot of stuff was dirty and greasy. I found a jar of dog treats that had a pipe and a film canister with substances in it that had been buried in the dog treats. My boss took it home with him. Story 28. I think it's worse when you consider the crap that gets put out. Sure, some things get thrown away. But surprisingly, I was told to put most of it on the shelves for shoppers. And people bought them. I would not trust an open box of pads, lady, but it's your purchasing choice. Until I started working there for volunteer hours, so I wasn't paid to touch these things with my bare hands, my friend had thought Goodwill washed the donated clothing and would wear them the next day. Wow, no. They just Febreze that crap. I just remembered the cardboard box of toys that was soaked in piss. Was not donated that way, but a little kid came in the store and did his business right in it. Luckily, I was on a lunch break and was not the volunteer that had to carry that box away or clean the floor. Story 29. About 3 weeks ago, I took a donation from a woman that I can best describe as a crazy cat lady, and she was about 350 pounds, I would guess. She had multiple cats in the car with her, and the smell was god-awful. As I'm standing by the car waiting for her to get whatever she is getting from the back seat, she bends over. She was not wearing any underwear and had stains down her leg. I didn't have time to look away. Anyway, the 2 bags I received from her contained pissy old clothes and several pieces of cat crap. She also gave me a small chair that was covered in mouse and cat crap. Ducking, disgusting. Apparently this lady was well known to my co-workers, which would explain why they decided to hide when she came up. I guess you can call it a prank. They got me good. Story 30. By far the strangest I saw was a prosthetic leg, complete with wool sock and boot. Prosthetics are specially made to fit the user. The person donating it must have known this and that. It would be useless. But we kept it in the back room for a while, just because. Oh, also lots of sex toys. Story 31. It's not really disgusting, just sad and annoying. My parents used to work for a humanitarian group on the Navajo Indian Reservation near Gallup and Nim. Churches from all over the country sent donations. Sometimes the stuff was really nice, sometimes not. They would throw out whatever they deemed unfit to hand out. The worst was a box containing half a pack of cigarettes, 2 sticks of gum, stained underwear, sneakers with the soles worn out, and a few books where most of the pages were torn out. Just thoughtless and uncaring stuff like that would show up about once a week. Story 32. On the first few nice weekends in spring, the local Deseret Industries would ask for extra volunteers on the receiving dock to handle all of the people doing spring cleaning. I had a free morning and figured why not help out. Thus it was that I found myself staring at the back of a pickup truck with a full-size championship billiards table, completely disassembled. I think this falls under weird, because there's nothing disgusting or nasty. But what exactly is a thrift store that sells a bunch of clothes and toys and books and kitchenware going to do with a freaking 9-foot billiards table? It was in really great shape, too. The owner needed to move and couldn't find a buyer, and the dump was going to charge him hundreds of dollars. We couldn't directly lift the slate with the forklift, so we had to manually lift a 900 lawnmower slab over onto the forklift. Story 33. I worked at a Goodwill donation center. The worst thing I personally experienced was a large garbage sack, think 33-gallon yard waste sack, filled with unwashed underpants, and a set of steak knives. There were far more wonderful donations, however. My favorite was, oddly, the same size sack full of fireworks. Because we could not accept explosives as a donation, they were donated directly to the trunk of my car. Story 34. I used to sort donations to Toys for Tots while I was in the Marines. It's supposed to be donated toys for poor kids. We basically filled a standard gymnasium to about 7 or 8 feet deep with all the donations we got. We would sort them by age group and gender, I know gender roles and whatever, and distribute them to local nonprofits, mostly churches. Mostly it was good stuff, even some really expensive toys. But I also saw steak knives, fireworks, canned vegetables, used clothes, and some other weird crap. We weren't allowed to distribute toy guns or weapons. Something about not wanting to appear to be militarizing America's poor youth. So we got to keep and play with all the Nerf guns. We had full-on, epic Nerf battles with complex ambushes and crap. Story 35. I volunteered at a thrift store for a while, and the highlights include a pellet gun, a box of doll parts, marine flares, a box containing about 5 electric razors, none of which worked, a clock that, when I plugged it in to test if it worked, threw sparks everywhere and tripped the circuit breaker, and a dog-repelling flashlight. The last item was the most puzzling. It looked like an ordinary flashlight, just with a trigger. The picture on the box showed that it's shooting something, which looked to me like a laser beam. I gave the trigger a few experimental pulls to see what would happen, but fortunately, nothing happened. The flashlight also didn't work, so I cracked it open to see if it needed batteries, and found a small canister of pepper spray inside for, repelling dogs. Story 36. I worked at Goodwill for a summer a few years back, and one time, this girl that looked to be in her mid-20s donated a bag of stuff. She was really nice, and before she left, she gave me a wink and said, "I hope those things go to good use." My coworker and I thanked her and began to sort it. When we opened it, we were greeted by possibly the most revolting scent I've ever encountered. In the bag, there were 5 sex toys covered in a dry caramel-colored layer of crap and, what I assume, juices. Both me and my buddy throw up and instantly throw those things out. That's probably my worst story. Story 37. My mother started a food pantry at her church, which is open to anyone, no questions asked. At first, she was happy to receive donations of food and toiletries, but she got disgusted at having people donate expired canned goods or actual rotten food. We're talking cans at least 6 or 7 years over the expiration date with rust on them, and people's puffy leftover casseroles. They would try to tell her the casseroles were good until they puffed up under the foil. I understand people don't want to throw away food, but why would they think she would want bad or rotten food? Also, she was amazed at the amount of expired baby formula people would donate. My mother now prefers cash donations, and she goes out weekly to stock the pantry with fresh, good food and usable items. Story 38. Used bookstore. This guy would come in every week with a trash bag full of paperbacks to sell. He came off as kind of addict. We never bought any of them, and it's not like it would have been good money. Maybe 20 cents a book. Each bag had a unique set of smells. There was the cat's hit bag, with bonus turd at the bottom, the piss bag, the stale cigarettes bag. It was a really disgusting experience. We tried to stop taking his donations and ban him from the shop, but he kept coming back and was very, very forward. Eventually, we gave in and gave him like $2 for a bag of books each time he came in, and then tossed them in the dumpster out back. Still have no idea where he got all these books. Story 39. I work at a Goodwill. We've gotten a couple massive SC toys, a live grenade, guns, crap-covered items, semen-stained everything, used tampons, tons of adult film, and bags of just plain garbage. Sometimes donations don't even get a chance to be priced. They just go straight into the garbage. Kids' toys, books, stuffed animals, right into the trash. Bags and boxes of stuff. We do get awesome crap donated sometimes. Recently, we got a basket full of 60s Barbie and Ken dolls. We also have received a $10,000 watch, vintage video game system, pre-1900s furniture, and expensive purses. We recycle books, metal, computers, TVs, and purses. Surprisingly, plastics and glass don't get recycled. I've learned people will donate anything just to fill out the form to send in with their taxes. Story 40. I worked at Goodwill during college. I was the guy who sorts through housewares and prices them and also accepted donations whenever needed. One time I got a box of sex toys. I've never had to pluralize sex toy before, and I hope I never have to again. Story 41. My boyfriend works at the Salvation Army. He says every day people will leave bags of their garbage. I don't mean one man's trash, another man's treasure. I mean the same trash you haul to the road every week. Having said that, the weirdest thing that I can remember him telling me about was when he had to sort through a huge bin of donations, and he came across dirty dinner plates with food still stuck to them. He's found many more weird and interesting things, but I can't remember them all. Story 42. Here I go. A suitcase completely filled with vomit. A box of 8 years worth of Playboys, all completely hardened with love stains, many junk pumps and stretchers of every size and shape imaginable. a bird cage from like the 1950s complete with bird story 43. After volunteering at a thrift shop for 2 years, I thought this thread was mine, damn it. But the worst thing I can think of is only the occasional donation of unwashed, so worn that they're unsellable clothes. We just throw these straight into the trash and there's no problem. Instead, we get a lot of cool stuff, especially clothing and books. Story 44. Kinda relevant, just not nasty. When I was in high school, I was forced to volunteer at the local day for 22 hours, partitioned up among many Sundays. Was going 77 in a 55. Figure it out. Anyway, all of the china and dish sets that people donated, like all of it, was taken by me, back out to the dumpster for me to dispose of by playing frisbee with antique pieces of platerware. Felt bad and awesome at the same time, and beat picking up cigarette butts. Story 45. Your name it, it's been donated. Piss-stained, cigarette-burned, moldy clothes, pissy clothes, cat poop, dog poop, cow poop, human poop, sex toys, boxes of adult film, guns, knives, bulletproof vests. I've seen it all. Value Village donation attendant for 8+ years. Story 46. Used to work for the PVA, collecting items for a chain called Thrift Town. The most unusual items I've ever loaded into my truck had to be a lawnmower with half a tank of fuel, 50 king-size bed frames, local hotel was remodeling, an 80-gallon water heater. Yeah, no bag of junks, I know. Story 47. Freshly used lingerie, used adult diapers, used toothbrushes, piss-soaked clothing. We've had shotgun shells too quiet a few times. The worst part about any of them is the spiders that come in with it. We've had brown widows, black windows, brown recluses, wolf spiders. It's insane the things people donate. The absolute worst was dumpster divers. We finally had to get a lock on our trash can. Story 48. I volunteer at a donation shelter for abused women. Occasionally, some stuff we can't take like books, and once a riding crop. At least once a week, we'll get a bag or box that has useless trash in it. The most disgusting thing we got, though, which luckily I didn't handle it, was a plastic bag full of used cat litter. Story 49. I was driving in Norway a few years ago, emptying cloths container thingies for a charity org there. And the stuff I found in those containers, airsoft gun, small bazooka, well, these were the cool stuffs. So I'll cut to the two worst things, human crap in a plastic bag and a dead cat in a plastic bag. But you gotta hand it to the Norwegian weirdos. At least they bags the weirdness they dumped. Story 50. I accepted the donations at a loading dock for a larger department store-style thrift store. One day, a man approached with an entire pickup truck full of soiled clothing, reeking of urine. He told me that his wife had just died and that these were hers. He smelled of root vegetables. I threw the clothes out with a shovel. Story 51. At a food pantry I used to volunteer at, people donated all kinds of useless, expired, opened food. An outstanding example was a 5 block of peppermint candy, opened and from the previous Christmas. Story 52. I used to work for Goodwill in the books section. 2 boxes stood out. One was a box filled with cabbage, and it wasn't rotten either. Second was a bunch of kids' books with an ant farm, but the ants were all dead. So basically, someone donated their dead ant farm. Rip ants. Story 53. I used to work at a thrift store. An old lesbian couple donated a clearly used goldish sex toy. Some of the outside coating had begun to flake off, and I am assuming this was due to use. Also, the same couple donated a belly button lint brush. Story 54. My brother rented out a room in his house. When the tenant moved out, he left behind a bunch of his stuff, including a huge collection of freak adult film. My brother just bagged it all off and donated it to ARC. Story 55. I worked at Goodwill in high school. People don't seem to think there's anything wrong with donating underwear. Part of the job was to sort things, which meant digging through bags of stuff. I tore open a bag once, and just as I started to sift through it, a box of needles and syringes fell out of the bag. Story 56. Volunteered with Goodwill for a school project. Got a ceramic cookie flower jar sort of thing, filled with condoms. Some at the top were fresh, but when we dumped it out and poked it with a stick into the dumpster just to see, they were caked together and the semen was yellow and the smell was horrifying. Story 57. I just started working at my local thrift store a month ago. We always get nasty clothes, but one time this couple donated stuff from one of their dads who has Alzheimer's, and there was a bag of crap it in a box with other goods. We can't sell that crap. Story 58. I work at a company that sorts clothing donated to charities, roughly 300 tones per month. There's a lot of thrash, actual garbage, piss-soaked clothes, sometimes crap, bed covers stained with blood and piss, bags full of used medical syringes, used baby diapers. For 99% of the time, it's fine, but when it gets bad, it's really bad. Story 59. Aside from the traditional human piss, cat crap, dead rat, or even, yes, sex toys. The weirdest thing that my Goodwill has ever come across was a box of semen samples. It came in a rather large donation with several boxes. We found this particular part of the donation long after the donor was gone. Story 60. We constantly get lunchboxes, kids' school bags with half-eaten food still inside. And having to sort bras is pretty nasty, especially when there's sweat stains. Story 61. Mom worked in a thrift shop for years. People frequently donated unwashed underwear. It went into the bin. There's still a box full of Matchbox cars that I acquired from that place at home. My nephews play with them now. Story 62. Perfect timing. I just started a job doing this yesterday. Anyways, yesterday I found half a pack of tissues, a box of completely destroyed sponges and stunk, and a child's toy. I'm pretty sure that had been vomited on. Woo! Story 63. The nonprofit independent elementary school I work at had a huge yard sale to raise money a few summers ago. Someone donated a box of random items. Among the items were female condoms. They were in their unopened packages, but still. Story 64. I volunteered at a homeless shelter that took donation. When sorting through the boxes of new stuff, there was a nice box of baby clothes. I got about halfway through before the smell hit. All the clothes in the middle of the box were covered in dried baby vomit. Story 65. Bags of trash. A lot of people will donate trash to Savers/Value Village stores because the store pays nonprofit charities money for every LB of donations they receive. A lot of people hate Savers because they are for-profit, so they will donate boxes of bricks. Savers pays the nonprofit regardless. Story 66. 200 blank cassettes. At least that's the oddest thing I've seen. There is, however, a box labeled inappropriate in the back room that I have yet to look inside of. Redditors that work at Goodwill or other donation centers, what's the weirdest thing that was sent in? Story 1. It's my time to shinny. Worked at Goodwill for 2 years in high school. There was a blood red candle that was of near life-size Cocker Spaniel with black eyes. Brand new stuff was always weird to see, like a brand new baby swing unopened. Why? A mattress bag filled with Polly Pockets came in once, and those dolls are not cheap. I sent them back to up the price from $8 to $15. They could have sold that for $40 easily. I should have bought them just for the steal, damn it. There's a lot of mysterious stains on the clothes that get recycled. We only put underwear out with tags on them. Sex toys have come in, but I never saw them. A necklace with little junks on it. Then there was a reggae-type figurine with a huge junk and smoking. A manager said that needs to be put on the shelf because it would sell. To be fair, it did look handcrafted vintage, but corporate said, "Yay, well, sex sells, but throw it away," which was pretty hilarious to see an argument over the statue. I know there's so much more, but it's been a few years. Just thought of another thing. We'd get bags of lipstick holders, but without the mirrors. My manager said people take out the mirrors to line up substances. IDK if there's any truth to that, but we'd get a few bags like that. We had to send a sword to corporate because the handle looked fancy, and it turned out to be real rhino horn. We also got a check in the mail for a $1,000 donation from an anonymous donor. Story 2. Several things, I cannot pick the weirdest. A fully functional copper moonshine still. Keep in mind this thrift store was funding a substances and alcohol rehab. The couch their grandmother died on last night. I will leave it to your imagination on how it looked. Several dozen dioramas, using preserved roaches and crickets instead of people. They looked handmade and of surprisingly high quality. A tiny preserved infant hand in a small glass display box, complete with a plaque. Anna Teresa Harris, 1989-1989. $3,000 in cash. Taped it to the bottom of a dresser drawer. This was an estate clean out. Grandfather passed away and family just wanted the house empty. They actually left the money to us as a donation also. A computer with hundreds of highly specific YouTube videos downloaded to the drive. They were all short clips of party balloons popping. Amateur computer forensics reveal that 90% of the donors' internet history was searching for balloon pops. Apparently, there is even a few YouTube channels dedicated to it. Also, no adult film anywhere to be found. 300 tons of rotting fish. A fire safe donated with no combination. When tilted, a sliding sound could be heard. Personal curiosity and easy access to light industrial equipment convinced me to open it. Inside was a small cardboard box. Inside that was a note on loose leaf paper. It only consisted of 3 words: baby chicken monkey, and oh so many more. Story 3. When I was in high school, I worked at Goodwill. I was one of only 3 employees under the age of 50. One was a boy around my age who worked there as part of a program that found jobs for kids with disabilities. He had osteogenesis imperfecta brittle bone disease, and the other was a pregnant woman. So I often had to help move stuff into his donation shed when it was left outside. I was out there with a woman in her 60s named Rosie. who is a really cool, heavy-smoking, gruff-voiced calls everybody honey waitress at a southern diner type. This truck pulls up and a bunch college-age guys start unloading boxes and small furniture. They unload really quickly, and then there's just one last thing on the truck, a huge storage trunk. Two guys look at each other all weird, and the other guy says, "Just unload it and let's go." So they do, but they leave it next to the dumpster instead of in the shed. As they leave, Rosie and I try to pick it up by handles to move it, and it almost immediately tips forward, spilling hundreds of barely legal magazines at our feet. Rosie looks down and shakes her head, then looks up at the truck driving off and just clucks her tongue and says, "Shameful, shameful. I'm gonna tell Julio to get the shovel. I ain't touching them things with my hands."